Okay, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone around the globe joining us today. My name is Cole Phelan from Maya Grazing, and I'm really proud to have one of our grazing champions join us today, Maddy Pursehouse from NJN Pastoral. We've known Maddy for a few years now, and thanks so much for joining us. I'll try to get out of the way as quickly as possible and so we can hear from Maddy. But I tell you what, Maddy really has packed a whole lot in the last sort of 3.5, 4 years, I tell you, and a fascinating story, starting from a city girl, then going to ag college, wanting to get involved in the grazing game, making it happen, going into business with her father, etc. And all this in sort of the last 3.5, 4 years. She's experienced droughts, rains, stocking, destocking, too much grass, not enough grass, everything that you could be thrown at Maddy has been thrown at her. And thanks so much for joining us this evening, Maddy. I can tell you that we've got people joining us from all around the world: South Africa, America, all over Australia, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, the UK. It's wonderful to have you all here with us all times of day and night. So thank you. I'll throw to you, Maddy, but I thought the image that I'll put behind you, telling us where you are now, a bit about your property, and then going back to you as the city girl, I thought I'd throw this up, a rather idyllic picture. But over to you, Maddy.
Thanks, Cole, and thank you, Maya, for having me on tonight. I feel very humbled to have been asked. So I guess we bought Rothsay, which is on the edge of the Liverpool Plains at Blackfield, New South Wales, in August 16, so nearly 4 years ago. So we bought 2,300 acres, and 2 years ago we added an extra 1,700 acres on. So we're currently at 4,000, which is a nice size. We believe it's a nice size anyway for right now. And we follow regenerative principles here on the farm, and yeah, it's.
And what are we looking at there on that picture there, Maddy? Because that's all rather idyllic and bucolic, and I know it hasn't sort of been all beer and skittles since that photo was taken, but tell us about that picture.
So back in August 16, when we bought, it was an exceptional season, and we had stacks and stacks of grass, and that photo was taken pretty much just as we'd bought at auction. And as you can see, I mean, you can barely see me, but yeah, we were very lucky. Fabulous spring, heaps of grass everywhere. So a very good start to buying a property. And
it sort of reminds me of a photograph of myself and my wife when we first bought our first house, and we had a picture up in front of the sold sign, and we were as proud as punch. And then we had to go in and fix all the drafts and put insulation in, etc. And I know you've got your own story here. So let's rewind a bit before this picture was taken, and how did you sort of catch the bug? Because you don't have that sort of traditional multi-generation connection to the land or what have you. You're a city girl. Tell us about that. And you fell in love with the land through sort of farm stays and holidays and things like that. Tell us a bit about that. How did you get to rolling around in all that grass? Why did that happen?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably a rare story. I grew up in Sydney, as you mentioned, and basically I grew up riding horses. I guess that's probably the start of it. So since I was 5, I started riding and just doing lessons in Sydney. And we had a group of family friends, and every Easter we'd go out for farm stays. And so that's sort of what I guess got me into it, was just having the ability to go out in the country. We'd go trail riding and, feed the animals and all that sort of thing. But that probably sparked my interest. And then I ended up at boarding school at Neggs in Armidale, riding, and that's where I started doing agriculture there. And And so I finished that through high school and decided I wanted to pursue a career in horses. And I went to Tokau College in the Hunter Valley and started a horse husbandry course there. And I basically realized that I really enjoyed other aspects of it. So, you know, pastures and other bits and pieces. And I decided that I wasn't, I just didn't think riding horses was going to be the career for me. So I stayed and did agriculture, and basically just started working on properties since then.
And I know we were talking earlier, it's quite a leap from, you know, going to ag college, riding horses, realizing, you know, riding horses isn't necessarily what you're going to be doing for your career. And you then cobbled together a bit of a business plan and put it in front of your father. And to your surprise somewhat, he said yes, and then your boots and all in.
Pretty much. So I mean, I worked on numerous properties after I finished college, and I guess I've always been quite an ambitious person, and I guess quite early on when I was at Tokau, I sort of decided that managing a property and hopefully one day owning a property would be sort of the career and the direction that I wanted to go. So that was sort of always my aim, and somehow Dad, I put some budgets together and somehow convinced my father to help me invest in a property.
Fantastic. I'll have to get some business planning coaching off you one day. But what I've just thrown up on the screen, I'm not sure if it's come through for yourself, Maddy, but it probably has for everyone else. But this was a pretty stark reality not terribly long after that earlier photograph was taken. And I was wondering if you might be able to talk to everyone, talk to this photo and just fill everyone in what we're looking at here, because ultimately you were faced with some pretty massive challenges and decision making. And what were you thinking at this point? And yeah, just unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, it was, as I said earlier, it was a really good start when we bought, and we'd bought a heap of cattle, overpriced cattle. The market was pretty high at that point because there was so much grass around. And pretty much as soon as we signed the papers, it stopped raining. And as everyone knows, it's been a pretty challenging time all over Australia, but especially in New South Wales, in our area, it's been quite a challenging period. And it's been quite, you know, we've sort of been faced, I guess, with 3 years of quite a dry time. So this is my property is sort of on the right, and my neighbour's is, you can sort of see the square there, and it's quite a challenging photo to show, I guess. I'm very good friends with my neighbours, so I apologise for putting this up, but I guess it just sort of shows, I guess, with the management decisions that we've made, that we were able to conserve grass. I can't say we've made fabulous decisions, and I've definitely made plenty of mistakes along the way, but basically due to education and the grazing management tools and the planning that we made, that we were able to sort of keep some ground cover, which has steered us, I guess, in a good positive direction coming out of the drought.
And I know that we've talked quite a bit over the last couple of years about, you know, the real role and hunger that I guess that you had for education, and also and the role that education's played all the way through, as well as I guess people being mentors to you. How did you go about sort of building that from scratch? You know, how did you start out on that journey to sort of seek what you didn't necessarily know you needed to know? How did that all unwrap for you?
I guess what started was that to be honest, I guess my financial literacy wasn't as good as what I thought it needed to be. That was probably my biggest challenge. But I felt quite overwhelmed, and I was making decisions that I didn't really feel that I had enough information, I guess, and knowledge to be making. So I guess what got me down on the regenerative journey is that back at college, I'd read some books from Rachel Treasure, and that sort of sparked my interest in regen ag and thinking outside the square. And so in February 17, just after we'd bought, I did grazing for profit with RCS. And I mean, that was just a completely, like, it was a game changer. It was, looking at different areas of the business. And it basically is what's led me down this journey. I've done a lot with RCS now. I've been through their Next Steps program, and I'm currently doing Executive Link. But it's also steered me in other directions and learning with KLR marketing, Talent Park training. There's been lots of different courses that I've done over the last few years. That's basically helped me get to where I am now.
That's great, and I think I wouldn't mind you telling us a little bit more about that Talent Park training. I understand you've last year you hosted a workshop on your property, and you're doing some catchment hydration work there. But what I thought I'd just quickly bring up, you shot this over to me earlier this afternoon. Appreciate this. This is some of the data, I guess, on your property since you bought it, expressed in Maya Grazing. There's a lot going on here, but I thought it was really good because you did a bit of a timeline along the bottom there, starting from August 16, around the time that you bought the property, through to, this goes out to sort of January 19 or so. And Maya Grazing, we really didn't become part of your journey until in the middle there, around sort of January 2018. But you actually backfilled some of your data on your rainfall and your stocking rates and so forth. And when you look at all of this going on, and you see where your benchmarks are versus how much you're consuming and your rolling rainfall, it's quite a powerful story it's telling. But can you tell everyone what you're seeing in your own words there?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I guess if you're not a Maya Grazing user, it might look a little bit complicated, but it is really quite simple. Basically, the blue line, that's my rolling rainfall. And if we look at the green line, I guess as they're my cows, I guess we can look at it's my stocking rate. And then my carrying capacity, or my benchmark, is the black lines, which were dropped. So basically, if I have my carrying capacity, it's basically you want to have your green line under your black line. Basically, that's sort of the aim, is to keep your stocking rate under your carrying capacity. And as you can see, I well exceeded it. And the reason there's two lines is that I actually, in the second consecutive year of the drought, I actually dropped my benchmark by half. And that was just due to having heavy black soils and very little rainfall. But you can basically see as the green line's going up, the blue line's going down. So I'm losing rainfall. My green line's going up, so my stocking rate's increasing. And I am destocking over this time, which is, I guess, what is really fascinating. And when I actually started punching all this information into Maya, I actually realized that Maya was telling me 3 months earlier to be making the decisions, to destock quicker, I guess. And that would have been beneficial on for numerous reasons. One, the cents per kilo was decreasing drastically. So as I was holding onto them, my animals were worth less. But I was also eating more and more grass and going, and basically degrading my pastures further and further. So if I'd actually made these decisions earlier on and used Maya to its ability, I would have been much better off.
And I guess going back to those earlier photographs of the stark contrast down the boundary lines, they're always quite uncomfortable pictures sometimes to talk about. to look at and to show. But you know, clearly you were able to maintain some ground cover there, and which allowed you to sort of, I guess, get back in earlier than otherwise. Or how did that sort of play out? And just while I just loaded the next screen over, which is essentially your same data here in Maya Grazing, but it's actually projecting out. You've done some forecasts in Maya Grazing. When that pops up on your screen, Maddy, you may have a bit of a delay because you've used some of the forecasting tools, and I can see that you're reasonably conservatively under your carrying capacity benchmark there out into you know, later to 2020. So tell us a bit about how, when the season did turn, as we can see there through January 20, March, April, etc., it started to rain again. And what were the challenges that you were faced with there?
Yeah, so I mean, as you can see, you know, we did destock during the dry, and that did leave us ground cover. And so we did respond really well, even when we only had small amounts of rain. Our grass just, you know, it bounced back very quickly. And so we were able, even throughout the dry, even before, you know, it started raining this year, I think it's in December last year, we finally got under our benchmark, and then we basically started being able to make trades with the grass that we had available. And so even just with that, just by keeping ground cover and having small amounts of rain, we could still be making profitable trades. And that, you know, was so beneficial for the business during the dry, when people, you know, were degrading their properties and feeding cattle and spending a lot of money. We were actually being able to make profitable trades. And so that was really exciting. And then basically, you know, it started raining this year, which has just been a completely different ball game. And I've actually had to learn how to start managing growing grass. And so that's just, yeah, as I said, like, that's just been a whole new different ball game, and something that I haven't had to do for the last 3 years. Yeah,
so it is such a different challenge, isn't it? I mean, I know full well you got pretty good at you know, feed budgets and the burn down, and almost treating things as it was never going to rain again, and so forth. But this is a whole new challenge, and I guess you were able to be thrown straight into this challenge because you sort of did protect your ground cover. You were able to you know, capture whatever precipitation that you could, and get into this growing season or problem of developing grazing plans when everything's growing and all of a sudden you've got too much grass and not enough cattle. So how have you managed that, and what have you been doing to you know, to ensure that you can stay ahead of that?
So I've been doing a lot of feed budgets, doing forecasts in Maya. And I guess the first thing I really started doing was, I have some really fabulous mentors and some great support network around me. And so I really just started making phone calls to people that I thought highly of and thought that may be able to give me some advice, to very quickly learn, you know, just how quick, you know, the grass, when, you know, in summer, you know, our rest period is a lot shorter. So just actually, you know, working out how many cattle to take on. You know, the prices were jumping pretty quickly, so just trying to make the right decisions, and we took on some adjustment instead of buying straight up. And so I really just started making phone calls and just chatting with people that I really thought highly of, and spending a lot of time in the paddock looking around, monitoring rest periods, that sort of thing.
And I just should shout out there to everyone, we'll have a short Q&A at the back end. A few people have sent some questions through already, but please just use the little tool at the bottom of I think it'll be down the bottom, and the Q&A and just punch in if we've got time. We're going to keep it relatively short and sharp this evening. And if we don't get to questions, then we'll be putting those to Maddy and so forth afterwards. So feel free to jump in. Now, jumping back to something you mentioned earlier about you've clearly got place a huge value on education and RCS and KLR and so forth, and that's wonderful. And we've got many customers that do use such training to help give them direction and so forth. But you've sort of put the shoe on the other foot where with Tarwin Park training, you thought you'd actually not only get involved with that training, but also host that on your property. Tell us a bit about that work that you've been doing with that catchment rehydration work, and where has that led to in the last 12 months?
So, yeah, I mean, when we were chatting yesterday, Cole, I can't believe that it was June last year that we held the school here. But I guess I just wanted to get in. I had read Peter Andrews' book, Back from the Brink, and I was quite interested in rehydrating our property. And basically, we have a creek that runs through our place, and we have, so I guess some of the country is old farming country, so there's old contours, and I mean, they're really like drains. So if we do get any runoff or we get runoff from our neighbours, the water runs down them and basically runs down the gully and runs off our place. Into the creek off our place. So I guess I was really interested in how to keep as much water on our place as possible, as best as possible, and how to rehydrate our landscape and slow the flow. So I guess I got in touch with Stu Andrews from Tarwin Park Training and just said that, I was really interested to have him run a school on our property, and I thought it was just going to be beneficial more for me, to be honest, a bit selfish probably, but just to actually have them here and to get some works done in our landscape. And so we were really lucky that Local Land Services put some money forward to help that happen, and we got an excavator here and had some works done. So it's been fabulous to see that happen, especially with the rain over the last few months, just to see the difference. And it's been, we've seen some really positive results, and I'd highly recommend doing the school if anyone is interested in looking in that direction.
Oh, that's fantastic. And don't be ashamed of being selfish. I mean, if you're going to go onto one of those training courses, you might as well host it on your place. So good for you. And you had something like 25 other businesses sort of turn up. So that's wonderful. And I think to be commended to get involved and be proactive with it. Now, we've got a few questions coming in. And one with Dave McLean. Last week, Dave McLean at RCS was actually on a webinar with us delivering. Now he's asking the questions, but that's all good. Great to have you on there, Dave. Dave was just asking, really, what are your biggest learnings? I guess the key learnings that you've had. I mean, there must be so many, but and sometimes it's just sort of hard to rattle these things off. But what would be some of your biggest learnings over the last few years? I tell you what, you must have had a few.
Yeah, I must admit, I just saw that question come in. I thought, God, I hope Cole doesn't ask that, because it's a really hard one to answer. I guess for me, education has been the most important thing, because I wouldn't be in the position that I am without it. Matching stocking rate to carrying capacity has been a big learning curve. And both in the dry and now that it's rained as well. So basically being able to conserve and look after my grass. But then again, in the, since it started raining, is to actually make the most out of the season. So I think that's been really important. I could probably ramble on all day, Cole. So
no, that's great. Another one, which someone sent me on the text, was about you mentioned on the timeline, I think it was on the my grazing analytics thing, you had sold your cows, and then you'd mentioned adjustment or how has your herd configuration changed, and is that deliberately different now than it was? I've got my own questions about that, which I'll have a chat with you another time, but has your stock configuration changed, and why, and is that just a coincidence, or is that a deliberate thing to have more fluidity in your enterprises?
So when we first bought, I guess one of my interests was having my own grass-fed beef brand, and so we wanted to have a consistency of, we'd have a cow and calf herd, and then we could have consistency in our meat that we sold. And then as it got drier and drier, we hung on to our cows for what I believe is too long, and I finally made the decision to sell them, which was really a very, very challenging decision, but it's basically created flexibility in our business. So Terry McCosker came and did a kit day here, which is a keep in touch day with RCS in October 17, and we were chatting about, we did figures on trading versus breeding and that sort of thing, and for our business, trading was a better option. And it did take longer for me to finally make the decision to sell the cows, but it's basically moving completely to a trading operation. It's just created flexibility in our business. The most important thing for me is growing grass. So having that flexibility to buy and sell, or I should say sell and buy in KLR terms, that it just creates the fabulity. When I have grass, I can have cattle. And when I don't have grass, I can get rid of them. And the other thing that is fabulous, well, I guess, and I just had to do it for my own self, is if I guess when I had cows, I had attachment to animals. So it was quite challenging to make those decisions, but moving to this flexibility of trading and coming in and out, I don't get attached, and so it just makes the decisions easier, basically, when it starts getting drier, that I can destock quicker.
And we were talking earlier just about with those adjustment cattle that you have, and how you manage your adjustment contracts, and you're talking about in Myer Grazing, whether it's growing season or non-growing season, and it's feed burn down budgeting, you always have a 3-month plan and grass budget in play. So essentially you're using that to your advantage with your naturally with your adjustment contracts. You're giving a guarantee of feed because you're managing it so closely, but it allows you to have huge, I guess, flexibility with your adjustment contracts, sort of a rolling 3-month term. I've just sort of said it all there, but tell me a bit about how you're giving your customers more confidence, and has that been a real advantage for you or for them, or how have they sort of viewed your approach to grazing management as a customer with their adjustment?
Yeah, so I basically I believe with the ability, I guess, that I have right now, that I can budget about 3 months of grass ahead of me. And so I guess that gives me confidence taking on adjustment, that I can guarantee that I have 3 months, 3 months of feed for the amount of LSUs that I take on. So I'm very upfront, that we have planned grazing, rotations, and, explain that, we look after our grass out of diversity, and all that sort of thing. So when I take them on, I guess it gives them, I guess I believe that, they would be happy that they know that I'm not going to take on cattle and they're going to run out of grass, basically, because they know that grass is my number one, and that's what I want to look after the most. So I think that really helps in terms of, their view of, giving us the cattle and actually being assured that we are going to look after them.
Yeah, there's a couple of general sort of operational type questions coming in. Do you have any farming country as part of the mix as well? And the other one was no. And the other one was how are you managing your water? In terms of, did you have pretty good water infrastructure on the properties, or is this something that you've had to put a lot of time and effort into as well?
So no to the farming, although we do have some nice, some areas that we can plant into. So we've been putting in some multi-species pasture cropping, and eventually, as the soil gets healthier, I definitely wouldn't be against trialing cash crops in the future, but very interested in the multi-species and what Gabe Brown's sort of been doing in the States in that area. And in terms of water infrastructure, before we bought, the fella that we purchased the property off, he had done some upgrades to water, so that was really helpful. We have found that on other areas of the property that wasn't upgraded, we have really struggled. We had 1,000 head on earlier in the year, and we were really struggling. Like, we would have liked to have them in one mob to have good animal density, and water just couldn't hold up, so that became a limitation. So we're actually in the process at the moment. We've got a dozer here today actually, and we're putting in new pipelines in certain areas of the property to basically try to improve water infrastructure so we can hold bigger mobs of cattle.
Exciting. We have promised that we'd sort of keep it pretty tight this morning. This morning for some people, tonight for us. We've gone that half hour, but so just a few things sort of to wrap up, Maddy. What's your vision from here? I'm still in awe of everything that you've achieved and gone through, and you're still fighting and kicking and very optimistic for the future. What's the vision for Maddy Pursehouse and MJN Pastoral Holdings as you sprawl out across Australia and all of this? Where's this going for you, and what's your vision? And because I can't see you stopping anytime soon.
No, definitely not planning on stopping. I guess at this stage, we're just really looking forward to actually making the most out of an incredible season. So that's probably a very short-term vision, to be honest, but it's something that we haven't had the opportunity to do yet. And so it's been really exciting to start that journey and to see where it goes. We've got a baby due in August. So to be honest, that's probably the next part of our journey.
So you're increasing your stock price.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And basically just at this stage, we're pretty happy with where we've got the business and with what our plans are in terms of, continuing trading. I've still got a lot to learn. So just continuous education, and I guess we'll see where that leads.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I think that's a great place to pull it up this evening. And I think if you just keep that those 3-month graze plans ahead of you in line, then you'll continue to make good short-term, medium, and long-term decisions. But there's a bunch of questions, and I can promise everyone that we'll get to those. We'll pass those on to Maddy and be back in touch directly. Thanks so much for being with us, Maddy. You're a champion. And we love your story, and we think the world of you. So good evening to everyone. Good morning. Good night. If you just hang on after we close the webinar off, you'll go onto a web page where there's some more information about Maddy's story. And also for those in Australia, New South Wales, I think, keep your ears out for Maddy next week on ABC radio on the Country Hour, where I think there's going to be a bit of a story on the rehydration project and the local land service grant that you guys had up there through the Upper Mulkai. So thanks again, and we'll sign off.
Thanks, Cole. Thank you everyone for coming.